Hello and welcome back. It has been a while. I'm very sorry. I've been very busy. We have been very busy because we have a planned release date, Q4 2024. I'm actually not 100% sure if I can already say the full release date, but I'll check. I've been working on the music for the first chapter of the game, as we call it the disaster chapter. And in this episode, I want to go over how we developed the sound of this chapter. So usually when I start out a new project, I ask everything that they have in terms of concept art, game design documents, early builds of the game or levels. And the artwork for this game was a huge inspiration. It's like this mystical fantasy world, quite atmospheric, mostly set in nature environments as well. And some of the main influences that they described for the game were Journey and the Ori series. One thing that Journey does really well in its soundtrack is that there is one theme that Austin Wintory uses in all kinds of different ways throughout the entire soundtrack, but you can always recognize it. This is an approach I really wanted to take as well, that we have this one theme that we tell the entire story with and that can develop as the game develops. And in terms of the Ori inspiration, we tried to take the atmospheric sound world from the Ori games and give our own spin on it. And with all this in mind, I started working on a music research document. And a music document is something that I write where we just write down what the music needs to do, where it needs to do it, and how it's gonna do it. So we start with what role does the music have, and also try to figure out some ways how we can help the player or guide or reward them with possible music. So for the disaster, what we're focusing on today, the goal was sad, melancholic, feeling separated and small, cold and empty. So for the theme, I thought we will never hear the theme in full, but we'll only hear fractions of it here and there, reminding us of it, but it's never playing it in full. In terms of the instrumentation, I wanted to bring this back to the bare bones of the things we described in the full instrumentation. So for this one, it's mostly pads, bells to create this big atmosphere. We decided on solo instruments rather than section instruments, especially for the strings, that's important. If we hear string sections, they're only there to create like effects, string textural effects to support the synth pads here that I love to use. Harp is the main harmony instrument, and then a lot of the low flutes in the open atmosphere. So with all this in place, I got to work. So here I have gone through a lot of sketching ideas, figuring out what to do with these limitations I put on myself. Here we have the bells, some high string textures, low flutes. I really like this multiphonic atmosphere. And I hear you say, hey, this has string sections. And you said you wouldn't use those. Which is true, which is why later on I labeled this bigger level section level 5 potentially. Just some creepy chords. But then when later on in the level you come back and you hear have a quicker ostinato going on with the bells, because I can't resist. I think you can notice here how much difficulty I was having with the idea of it needs to be super sparse, because it's all still sections, a lot of movement, and I couldn't figure out a way of how to bring all of this together. I believe until I wrote this one. When I wrote this sketch, I finally thought, all right, we're getting somewhere. But I really like the sound of this major chord. Major is often associated with, oh, it's happy. This chord in itself, yeah, it's major, but it doesn't necessarily feel happy, especially if you alternate it with. It's like a release point, but it's melancholic and it's a bit unstable. And I've really liked that with having this major thing, I can have. So this is a group of double basses going on the A string and moving their finger up and down very lightly, where it creates harmonics as soon as it passes those notes on the string. So what you get is that it's playing the entire harmonic series on that particular string. And from From here it gets very close. It's very major, but it's also very natural in a way. So I chose to layer those two principles. So this is where I first thought, okay, now we're onto something. And this is the first proper attempt I did for a main looping idea. So we have the harmonic glissandi. And then here with harp, I'm doing this D minor. Very unstable F, C sharp, E. Back to D minor. Here I was starting to explore this idea of what if we have this very majory harmonic glissando and we combine it with very unstable minor chords to create this kind of disconnect. Okay, now we're onto it. Let's start writing some loops. Then for variation, and this is also something I want to use for puzzle progression later, but we haven't gotten to that yet, is introduce a couple of melodies. And let's now dive into how this works in game in the end. These loops consist of 3 different sections, A, B, and C, that we changed the order of. So for loop 1, it always picks just the A section, or A, B, C, or A, C, or A, B. Then for the second loop, it always starts with A. It repeats a couple of times, then it picks either B or C or B followed by C before going back to A. And then finally, loop 3 is the most complex one because it has the most options. Then I also composed bridges when we want a little break in the music. And how we used to do this is with this playlist. And when playing this, it would run for around 20 minutes before it would go back to the top with all the repetitions and bridges and silences and whatnot. However, when the chapter was developing, I thought it would be better if we keep the same order of things, but we have more control over how and when these loops play. So here we start with no music, and then here it triggers the first section, and then we drop off this cliff, then it goes into the first loop. Then it plays for a while you're platforming and hopefully not dying too much until we reach this cave over here. Well, I have one bridge that is just solo viola, and I thought it would be cool here to have that one play. As soon as you hit this rune over here that opens the gate, at that point we trigger a transition and we immediately go from this first loop into the bridge, which plays through the cave until you reach this next checkpoint, and there we move into the second loop. So initially I had just start the loop, forget about it until we reach the next point, which would only be level 5. But now I thought, let's have some more control over where these bridges are, because this cave seemed like the perfect opportunity for this solo viola. Because it happened to me randomly once while I was testing, and then I thought, this actually works pretty great, so why not try this out? Keep some more control while I'm implementing the music. So let's have a look in game and see what that looks like. Like I said, the game looks completely different. We enter this cave. There we go. That's one of the bridges that I composed. Mostly atmospheric string effects with some harp blocks, just to set the scene a little bit. And then as soon as we drop the cliff, next transition is triggered, and we have the bridge is still fading out underneath, and I put the transition in such a way from this bridge to this first loop that we always hear this piano version, no harp, no background, just the piano. The first time we hear this loop, when this is done, that's when we get into the playlist. Now with the background layer. From here it starts looping. That's it from me for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. In the next one, I will be diving into the main theme that you've heard a couple of times already, but now I'll dive into how it was constructed, how this music research document came into play, and actually how the two kind of developed together. Don't forget to wishlist Halve on Steam and join our Discord if you want to. Links are in the description. Iridas's next devlog about the general development of the game should be up on his channel as well, so go follow him. Also, like below and everywhere. And I hope to see you in the next one.